say, have you got me good side? I just get insulted. Good evening. If you do have a mobile phone, if you'd like to put it on silent, please, thank you. A massive welcome to Cara St, an American lady now living in London and just round the corner from the Grenfell Tower, incidentally. Hello. Cara's talk is entitled Reverse Engineering the Trance. Our Trance, maybe. She's an author and has worked with Harold Kautz-Vella, Mark Devlin and Maria Wheatley, amongst others. Cara will cover false history, sovereignty, food, the power of the human imagination, possibly demonic control mechanisms, and touches on the mysterious Fae. Please welcome Cara St.
Well, yes and no. Hello, St. Anne's, and shout out to Mark Devlin for putting me in touch with Rob, because I've seen lots of videos from and lectures from this series, and it's really a fantastic thing. And so I'm proud and glad to be here tonight. One thing I do want to tell you before we start, though, is that you may or may not know that foundationally my thing is the imagination. I will spend the rest of my life talking about the imagination in one form or another, because it is our mechanism as human beings. And so for the longest time I didn't have a thing behind me like this, because I thought it was a bit rich for me to talk about the imagination and not ask you to use your imagination. However, I did a lecture in Vienna about a year and a half ago, and there was a fellow there who told me that really we did need these presentations behind us. And the reason that we need them is because, listen carefully, they engage your subconscious. I want you to hear that, because every time you sit in front of a presentation, that's what's happening. Your subconscious is immediately being engaged. I think it's fair to tell you that. Okay. Also, this particular lecture, Reverse Engineering the Trance, is now actually Reverse Engineering the Trance Let's Go Deeper. And that's because I've discovered in the last 6 months or so that I'm talking in front of some pretty clued up audiences. And so we really do need to go a little bit deeper. It's time to, start talking about the next level down, or the next 2 levels down, or 3 levels down. It's time to move on. So that's what I'm trying to do, is create a deeper lecture. Additionally, I have been very, very lucky lately, in the sense that some of the people that I talk to around the world about various research subjects have brought me things that have literally blown me away and deepened my understanding and my ability to flesh things out for people and for myself. And so I have especially yesterday morning, I conducted an interview for myself, for my channel, with a fellow called Dan Schreiber, who's in Australia. It was a conversation that I started to have with him last year, and then I never got a chance to finish because I just kind of got pulled away from him. Anyway, so I tried very hard to add that material to this lecture, and so that's why you'll see these teeny tiny typey things in there that I quickly put on, but I will read them to you. You're not going blind. It's because I had to do it that way. Okay? All right. So I'm told I can do this, and it will go. Yes, it does. So listen, I will tell you about myself. I will. I want to. But I want to talk about you first. Okay? I want to talk about you first, because if you know who you are, then your mind cannot be colonized. Your mind cannot be programmed if you know who you are, but you don't. No one knows who they are anymore. And it's really, really important that we start bringing that back. So this lecture also includes different pieces of the various pieces of research that I've done. All right. So, as I said, my whole thing is the imagination. Who are we? The human imagination, this is my postulate. I came up with this a couple of years ago and I'm living it and breathing it. The human imagination is the translator between the morphogenic field, which is pure potential, and the material plane. That means everything you see, you've created. Okay? We are the creators. We are the original magicians. We are rare. We are the only creatures, in my view, we are the only creatures in the universe that can do this. That's what answers the question, why us? Because an entity that could not do what we do, but very much wanted to do what we do, would seek to find our gift and take it, or failing that, bend us to its will and change us such that it or they could make us do what it or they cannot. In other words, we have a couple things going on. We've got a predator and we've got parasites. Okay? There is authentic intelligence and there is artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence, whether you consider that to be a computer or not, doesn't much matter. Artificial intelligence seeks to do what we cannot do. It seeks to create the things that we can create. Non-enlivened entities represent artificial intelligence. For example, every piece of technology around you is a dim copy of a capacity that a human being already has. Okay? I learned that decades ago when I was in teacher training. I'm also a Waldorf teacher, Steiner teacher. I'm at the end of that career, but 20 years ago, one of my professors said to me, you do realize that a computer is just a dim replica of a human brain, right? And I do mean a dim replica. These are unenlivened creations. They're not life. Artificial intelligence cannot create life, but if there is artificial intelligence, there's also authentic intelligence, and that's us. We enliven everything. That's our job. We enliven them. We are the original magicians. We are still magicians, while this parasitic predator cannot ascertain the location of our imagination, which is the heart mind. It can use us in drastic ways. Our heart mind is the location of the imagination. It vibrates at a frequency that the predator can't see. It cannot locate the seat of our imagination. What it can do, though, is convince us it doesn't exist or that it's trivial. How many times have you heard the words, oh, it's just your imagination? It's not just your imagination. Your imagination's everything. It's our magic. Okay. There are two things I want to say tonight, well, amongst a million. First, we are blood sacrifices and energetic banquets. And I'm going to explain that, of course. Second, they've contained our language, that is to say the English language, to the point that we are only casting the spells they want us to cast. Now we have no idea we are doing this on a conscious level. I have to give a shout out to somebody called Paul Rippon. Do you know that name up here? You might. I think he's a northerner. Anyway, he amongst other people do a lot of really good work on language, the English language, and how powerful it is, and how magical it is, and how we cast spells when we spell words. Each letter is a spell. Each word is not a spell. We spell words with letters. Each letter is a spell. This is who we are. However, you know, you've been told, you've heard reports that we're being dumbed down. Absolutely true. In the sense, especially, that they've contained our language. Okay? Our vocabulary could be as vast as the entire planet. We use this much of it. We use this much of it. And we use this much of it because we're constantly recasting the spells that they want us to cast. We're living in their world in that way. And we don't know that. And why do you think we don't know that? Because we don't know that we're magic. We don't know that we're casting spells when we speak. This is how we create with our voice. Imagination, voice, yes? It's how this is in the lore that goes all the way back as far as you can imagine. Okay. Why us? Did you move? All right. Why me? Okay. Why me? All right. This is an interesting story because it's kind of turned into a saga. The saga of an activist. But I want to tell you this story because it's about my mom. And my mom is the reason I'm standing here right now. My mom and my children. I mean, you can understand that, right? Mark Devlin asked me the other day, said something like, I don't know why we do this, or we do this because we have children, right? And if you didn't have children, would you care? Would you be looking this deeply? Would you know what you know? Would you be as brave as you're being? Probably not. Okay. Tomorrow is July 11th. In the United States, we call that 7/11, which means something to us, all of these 11s, you know. Tomorrow's the 7th anniversary of the day that my mother was killed. Now, my mother had a very high security clearance with the U.S. Navy, and she worked all kinds of places. She worked for weapons in Virginia. She worked for the Office of Naval Research in London. She worked with Operation Paperclip scientists and Eastern Bloc scientists, and she worked with all kinds of companies in Hawaii that were trying to get defense contracts from DARPA. Okay, she saw a lot of stuff. She was a technical editor, all right? And she never could tell me what she was looking at except to tell me that it scared the hell out of her. She couldn't tell me. So on July 11th in 2010, she was living down the street from us because she'd moved to Maine. She knew that her grandchildren were getting ready to leave home, and she wanted to be near them. And she was walking to church about a block from her flat. And she was just about to the other side of the street when she was run down by a van. And she was thrown yards and yards and yards away. And she was still conscious when they took her to the hospital, believe it or not. And 4 hours later, she died in my arms. Tomorrow's the 7th anniversary of that. That's how I came to be standing here. Because from the moment my mother died, something inside me said, this wasn't random. And if it was random, I want to know that it was random. Okay? So I started to look into it, and all the people that my mother worked with at the Office of Naval Research especially were studying things like atmospheric physics and electromagnetics and plasma studies and psychology and all of those nasty, nasty things that the military uses to control us and each other. So all I had to do was open my computer and start looking around, and it took me about 5 seconds to come up with chemtrails. And then it was about electromagnetic weapons, and then all of this scary, scary stuff that's right there for anybody to see. They don't hide it. They don't hide it. They have to tell us what they're doing to us, or it just doesn't work. It's like the law of black magic, okay? Anyway, that was really scary for me, and it took me months to kind of start adjusting to the situation and the horror of what had happened. And then I realized I wasn't getting any information about my mother's death. I had to get an attorney to get in touch with the local police department so I could try to get an accident report. I was the sole survivor. She was 74 years old. What's the deal? How come it's so tough? I didn't understand. And I'd never did long about November of that year, okay? I got a letter in the mail with no return address, hand addressed. And inside was the very simplest police report you've ever seen. So somebody was trying to get me the information, but they didn't want to know where it came from. They didn't want me to know where it came from. It was hand addressed, all that stuff, okay? Meanwhile, we're coming up on Christmas. I'm driving her car around. Someone tries to run me into oncoming traffic. Stuff like that starts to happen.